A narrow shaft drops beneath Egypt's sand, and at the bottom is the clue tourists almost never see. The mistake is thinking ancient Egypt's biggest underground secret must be one sealed room full of gold. The better question is what the entire underground map was for, because in Egypt, the deepest discoveries are not always treasure. Sometimes the floor is the map. Picture the descent. A rope rubs against pale limestone. Dust hangs in a flashlight beam. The wall is close enough to touch, and every meter downward pulls the famous world above into silence. The pyramids, the temples, the painted tombs, the masks behind museum glass, those are the images most people know. They are real and they matter, but they can also mislead us. If we only look at the monuments rising above the desert, we miss the architecture cut into the ground below them. Shafts, chambers, sealed corridors, work areas, burial routes, and spaces whose purpose is still debated. That is where the story becomes more interesting than a treasure hunt. Archaeology rarely gives up one dramatic answer all at once. It gives layers. A void that may be natural or human-made, a corridor that may have controlled access, a chamber that may be practical, ritual, or both. So the mystery beneath ancient Egypt is not about proving a legend or forcing a secret into the darkness. It is about asking a sharper question. If these underground spaces were not just storage or burial, what were they doing for the living world above them? That question matters now because interest in Egyptian discovery stories has surged again. Major documentaries have taken viewers through lost treasures, Tutankhamun, the pyramids, Ramses, and the great royal names that still dominate the public imagination. Those stories draw attention for a reason. Ancient Egypt feels familiar and unfinished at the same time. We know its silhouettes, but we do not always understand its hidden structure. Still, audience interest is not archaeological evidence. A popular video does not prove a chamber, a tunnel, or a secret. It only shows that people are leaning toward a certain kind of mystery, one that feels ancient, visible, and unresolved. So this story takes a narrower path. Instead of making another grand tour of every famous monument, it looks downward. What are archaeologists finding, documenting, and rethinking beneath ancient Egypt? What do tomb shafts, buried chambers, foundation deposits, corridors, cavities, workspaces, and sealed routes tell us that surface monuments cannot tell us alone? And why does the underground record sometimes change the meaning of what stands above it? The answer has to be careful. This is not a single confirmed dossier about one newly opened room that explains everything. The evidence is broader, more fragmented, and more interesting. Some of it comes from excavation. Some comes from survey work. Some comes from old sites being examined with better tools and sharper questions. And some of it remains uncertain, because an empty space below the ground is not automatically a tomb, a tunnel, or a hidden chamber. In archaeology, a void is a clue before it is an answer. Beneath ancient Egypt, that clue can take many forms. There are tomb shafts cut deep into bedrock, burial chambers sealed for protection, and foundation deposits placed beneath buildings as ritual acts. There are corridors that controlled who could move through sacred space. There are work areas where the practical labor of building and burial left traces behind. There are passages whose purpose may be known, debated, or still unclear. There are ritual landscapes where descent itself may have mattered, connecting the world of the living with ideas of death, renewal, and divine order. And there are natural cavities, cracks, or geological features that can look mysterious before they are properly tested. The reversal is simple, but powerful. The underground is not only where Egypt hid its dead. In many places, it may be where the visible monument received its meaning. A pyramid is not only a shape against the sky. A temple is not only columns and carved walls. A tomb is not only a room for treasure. Each can be part of a layered landscape where the seen and the buried work together. So if the surface is what Egypt wanted people to see, could the underground be where Egypt hid how the system worked? Once you start reading ancient Egypt vertically, the famous skyline changes. A pyramid becomes more than an exterior form. A temple becomes more than sunlight on stone. A tomb becomes more than an entrance carved into rock. At many funerary and ritual sites, the visible monument is only the upper layer of a design that continues downward. through shafts, ramps, chambers, passages, and blocked thresholds. That does not mean every monument hides a secret system or that every empty space is a lost room. The fact is simpler and more useful. Egyptian builders repeatedly used controlled descent as part of the experience of sacred and funerary space. You move from open air into shadow, from the world of the living into a place prepared for the dead, from public stonework into restricted space. The movement is physical, the meaning is interpretive, but the interpretation begins with the way these places were built. Think about the difference between seeing a pyramid from the outside and imagining the route within and around it. From a distance, the surface announces permanence. Inside, passages compress the body. Chambers change the scale. Angles matter. Closures matter. Access matters. Around pyramid and tomb complexes, archaeologists have studied shafts, corridors, burial rooms, sealed areas. Work traces that show careful planning below the level most visitors notice. In rock-cut tombs, especially in landscapes associated with royal and elite burials, descent can feel like part of the message. The deeper the route goes, the less the structure behaves like a building, and the more it behaves like a journey. Here is the key question. What if the underground was not an afterthought, but the part that gave the surface its meaning? That question changes the story. Above ground, ancient Egypt projected order. Stone faces, straight axes, sunlit courts, carved inscriptions, and monumental entrances turned power into something visible. Below ground, the same culture could control who entered, how far they went, what they carried, what they saw, and what remained sealed. The surface spoke to the living world. The underground spoke to memory, ritual, protection, and transformation. Some researchers suggest that these descents were not only practical solutions for burial and preservation, but also symbolic routes between states of existence. That is a theory, not a single fact that can be weighed like a stone block. But the architecture gives the theory something to stand on. A shaft is a fact, a chamber is a fact, a blocked passage, a carved route, a carefully hidden burial space, or a foundation deposit can be documented. What those choices meant inside Egyptian belief is where interpretation begins. This is why the search beneath Egypt should not be reduced to treasure. Gold can tell us what a civilization honored, but layout can tell us how it imagined the universe. And once you see that layout, the next mystery becomes sharper. If these underground spaces mattered so much, why make the way into them so difficult, so narrow, so sealed, and so controlled? The answer begins with purpose. The underground rooms of ancient Egypt were not built for the modern visitor moving through a roped passage with a guidebook. Many were designed for restricted moments, restricted people, and restricted meanings. A shaft could protect a burial by making access dangerous and controllable. A chamber could preserve offerings in a place where sunlight did not intrude. A corridor could force movement to slow down, turn, descend, and arrive in a sequence that felt less like ordinary travel, more like passage between worlds. The facts are the physical features: tomb shafts, chambers, sealed spaces, passages, caches, and foundation deposits. The interpretation has to be more careful. Some scholars suggest that underground routes may have staged ritual journeys, guiding the dead, the priests, the memory of a ruler through a landscape of darkness, stone, and renewal. That does not mean every tunnel had one secret meaning. It means function and belief often worked together. This is where the usual mystery changes. Stories about ancient technology often ask how people could possibly build such things. But in Egypt, the more useful question is often why every decision was worth the effort. Why cut downward through stubborn limestone? Why move material through narrow approaches? Why hide offerings where almost no living person would see them again? The answer may be less like a machine and more like a complete system of power. Engineering kept the space standing. Logistics got workers, tools, stone, and goods into position. Belief explained why the labor mattered. That is the real reversal. The most important find underground is not always a glittering object. Sometimes it is the layout. A blocked corridor can show where access stopped. A rough work mark can show where human hands paused, adjusted, or changed direction. A side chamber can show that a tomb was planned for more than one act. A carefully placed deposit can mark a foundation not as ordinary construction debris, but as a deliberate offering to stabilize a sacred place. Treasure tells you what a civilization valued. Tunnels tell you how it moved. And movement matters. Ancient Egyptian authority was not only displayed in colossal statues and inscriptions, it was also controlled through access. Who could enter? Who had to stop? Who carried the offering? Who sealed the door? Who remembered where the hidden route began? Beneath the surface, architecture becomes behavior preserved in stone. The rooms were not simply empty volumes under famous monuments. They were decisions made permanent. Still, caution is essential. A sealed space is not automatically a shocking secret. It may remain closed because opening it could damage fragile evidence. It may be unsafe. It may fall under legal protection. It may require more survey work before anyone can say what it is. And sometimes, a cavity is not a chamber at all, but geology, collapse, erosion, or an old disturbance misunderstood from above. That is why archaeologists do not treat darkness as proof. They treat it as a question. The underground can protect burials, preserve offerings, control ritual movement, and mark sacred geography, but each case has to earn its explanation. And that leads to the next problem. If archaeologists can now detect so much beneath Egypt, why are some spaces still uncertain, disputed, or deliberately left unopened? The deeper issue is not whether Egypt has anomalies. It does. The real question is, which anomalies belong to an ancient design, which belong to nature, and which belong to our own expectations? In archaeology, an anomaly is not automatically a secret chamber. It can be a cavity under stone, an unusual alignment in a buried wall, a patch of different material inside a floor, a void suggested by survey equipment, or a layer of debris that does not match what researchers expected to find. It is in the ground. And in Egypt, where monuments were built, repaired, reused, robbed, buried, and studied across thousands of years, question marks are everywhere. This is where the story becomes tempting. A scan suggests empty space. A passage seems to point somewhere unusual. A sealed surface appears where no sealed surface was expected. Immediately, the imagination races ahead. Is it a lost tomb? A hidden ritual chamber? Evidence of an older structure under the famous one? Or something more dramatic? But modern archaeology does not begin with the most dramatic answer. It begins with the clue. That clue might come from survey data, excavation layers, tool marks, inscriptions, pottery, human remains, or the geology of the site itself. A possible void has to be checked against natural fractures. A buried wall has to be placed inside a sequence of construction. An unusual object has to be compared with the layer it came from, the materials around it, the known habits of the people who used the place. The first discovery is rarely the final meaning. A real anomaly is not proof of a fantasy. It is a disciplined invitation to test possibilities. That distinction matters because ancient Egypt sits at the center of a powerful modern hunger. Viewers are drawn to strange constructions, hidden civilizations, and ancient technologies that still feel difficult to explain. Some of that curiosity is healthy. It asks why people in the distant past could organize labor, move stone, shape sacred landscapes, and build with a precision that still commands respect. But curiosity becomes weaker when it jumps straight from mystery to certainty. The more interesting path is slower. A cavity may be a chamber, but it may also be a collapse, a natural hollow, a construction gap, a space left for reasons we do not yet understand. An alignment may be intentional, but it may also be practical, constrained by terrain, or part of a later rebuilding. Unexpected materials may suggest trade, repair, ritual deposition, contamination, or reuse. The fact is the object or space. The theory is what it meant. Legend belongs to the stories people later told. Speculation belongs to what we imagine before the evidence is complete. This does not make the mystery smaller. It makes it stronger. A mystery that survives careful testing is more powerful than one that depends on ignoring the test. So when archaeologists find something beneath ancient Egypt, the first honest answer is not always a headline. It is a set of questions. What is it made of? When was it placed there? Was it natural or built? Was it used once, reused many times, or never entered at all? Does it belong to the original design, a later repair, a reuse of the space, or the geology below it? And most importantly, does it change the meaning of the monument above it, or only our expectation of what should be below? That is the hidden discipline behind every dramatic image. The flashlight enters first, but the conclusion comes much later. And if Egypt's underground spaces can change how we read its surface, then the final question is not only what lies beneath Egypt, it is how many ancient landscapes have been misunderstood because we stopped looking at eye level. That is the lesson hiding under this story. The strongest discovery is not necessarily one chamber, one golden object, or one sealed doorway waiting to shock the world. It is a pattern. Again and again, the surface monument asks to be read with the ground below it. The pyramid points upward, but its passages lead inward. The temple rises into sunlight, but its meaning can depend on foundations, deposits, crypts, and controlled routes. The tomb may be marked by stone above, but its real drama is often below the feet, in the descent. The closure, the offering, and the memory. This is why the phase beneath ancient Egypt matters. It does not have to mean a single hidden city or a secret that overturns history overnight. The more careful version is more interesting. Archaeologists are finding, documenting, and reinterpreting buried spaces that remind us Egypt was not only built to be seen from the outside, it was also built to guide movement, limit access, protect the dead, organize ritual, and make belief physical. Here, the boundaries have to stay clear. The facts are the physical spaces, the cut stone, the shafts, the chambers, the tool marks, the deposits, the documented finds, the layers in the ground. Theories are the explanations built from that evidence, including what a passage may have meant, why a chamber was sealed, how a route was used. Legends belong to another category. Speculation belongs to another category still. They can all be part of the human fascination with Egypt, but they are not the same as excavation, survey, or careful interpretation. That distinction does not weaken the mystery, it protects it, because when every void becomes proof of a fantasy, the real achievement disappears. The real achievement is that ancient Egyptians joined labor, engineering, ritual, kingship, death, and landscape into spaces, still make us ask better questions thousands of years later. Anyone chasing only treasure misses that deeper system. Gold can show wealth, a mask can show artistry, a royal name can show power, but a buried root can show how people moved through fear, hope, duty, and memory. A shaft can show how access was controlled. A sealed chamber can show what a society wanted preserved, hidden, or transformed. So the promise of this story was never that one final door would solve ancient Egypt. Archaeology rarely works that way. The promise is a clearer way to look. The next time a monument rises from the desert, imagine the eye-invisible half of it. Imagine the floor not as the end of the site, but as the beginning of the map. Because in Egypt, the deepest discoveries are not always treasure. Sometimes the floor is the map. And if that map is still being read beneath Egypt, then the next clue may be waiting under another famous place we thought we already understood. Subscribe for the next episode, because the deeper pattern is not finished yet.